Winger, the band that crawled out of Alice Cooper's tour bus and landed straight into the moist armpit of 1987 hair metal. You know you're in trouble when your entire band origin story reads like a Walgreens brawl over Axe body spray and Slim Jims. And Kip Winger played bass for Alice Cooper, which sounds badass until you remember this was 1986 Alice Cooper. You know, the era where Cooper was gagging on snakes and stuffing his pants with half-eaten cucumbers. And Paul Taylor, the keyboardist? Yeah, somehow this walking Radio Shack demo reel wound up in the Alice Cooper orbit as well, meaning half of this band is basically a side quest from the Constrictor tour. That's like saying your band was founded in the Denny's parking lot behind a Limp Bizkit show. Not exactly the origin of legends, but here they were, two men, bonded by eyeliner, alcohol breath, and the smell of burned latex wigs. And then they bring in Reb Beach, whose name sounds more like a failed Florida timeshare than a human man, but the guy can shred the living crap out of the guitar. And Rod Morgenstein, poor guy comes from the Dixie Dregs, an actually good band, which means he left jazz fusion heaven to join a band where the greatest lyrical achievement was, "She's only 17. Daddy says she's too young, but she's old enough for me." Jesus, that aged like fine sheep's milk in an unplugged fridge. Nowadays, the FBI would raid the studio the moment that song hit the tape. And get this, they were originally called Sahara. Probably the most boring possible name unless you're starting a knockoff casino in Reno. But they had to change it, because, of course, it was already taken. So Alice Cooper steps in like some kind of deranged rock fairy godmother and goes, "How about Winger?" That's not a name. That's what happens when your nutsack sticks to your leg in summertime and you gotta do the move to shake it loose. You gotta do the winger. This is how the band formed. Not from a cultural movement, not from a vision or rebellion, but because of tour bus leftovers, expired eyeliner, and a trademark lawsuit. They were formed in a marketing blender and set to whip dumbass, and somehow the thing worked. But not forever. Oh no. Spoiler, this train derailed hard. We'll get to that flaming trash heap in the fall of Winger part of this video, which I assume Kip will also blame on Alice Cooper, solar flares, and maybe a rogue keyboard solo that killed the 90s. August 10th, 1988, the day Winger unleashed their debut album on the unsuspecting world, and the ozone layer filed for a restraining order. Atlantic Records greenlit this, which tells you everything you need to know about late 80s record executives. They would have signed a goat if it had teased hair and a coke problem. So the album drops, Winger goes platinum, and America just shrugs and says, "Yeah, alright, I guess I do want to listen to four guys in pirate shirts yelp about underage girls and heartbreak." Japan bought into it too, probably because they thought it was satire. In Canada, well, Canada was drunk. That entire country has been high on pot fumes and quiet desperation since Rush wore robes. So the album charts for 63 weeks. 63. That's longer than most marriages in Las Vegas. That's longer than your last attempt at therapy before you found yourself in a Planet Fitness parking lot eating string cheese and yelling at your car. It peaked at number 21 because apparently the American public was too distracted by the Cold War and satanic panic to realize they were listening to a grown man named Kip whimper over guitar noodles. And that's the thing about 17, because nothing screams timeless art like a song where the entire chorus is just the judge's exhibit in a statutory case. It wasn't a red flag, it was a whole red parade. Kip Winger out there with his tight pants and jailbait serenade, and MTV just ate it up. People played it on repeat like they were trying to hypnotize a generation into becoming stepdads. And then there's Madeleine, which sounds less like a song and more like the name of a wine mom who ruins Thanksgiving by bringing up conspiracy theories halfway through the yams. Headed for a heartbreak? No, more like headed for a cultural reckoning soon enough. Hungry? You better be, because the royalties from this fever dream are going to dry up faster than your Revlon budget when grunge hits. So MTV made this band. They didn't break the industry. They snuck in wearing leather chaps and begged for airtime. And when MTV said, "Sure, you're hot right now," they acted like they cured rock and roll with stripper anthems and Diet Van Halen riffs. And Kip Winger himself, the guy literally admitted that nothing happened for 6 months until the 17 video aired. So basically you're telling me this platinum-selling album sat there collecting dust like a rejected mall kiosk until one video dropped, and suddenly it was prom night at the gas station again? Winger didn't rise to the top. They got crack spackled to a rocket by a desperate record label and shot into the sky by MTV, while America was too distracted by mullets, leg warmers, and unexamined trauma to notice that they were being sonically mugged by 4 men who dressed like rejected Final Fantasy characters. And the worst part? That damn album cover. You could smell the sickly sweet chap cologne through the plastic wrap. Didn't just go platinum. It haunted a generation of horny teens and confused dads. And now it sits in a thrift store somewhere, wedged between a used toaster and a VHS copy of Roadhouse. God bless the 80s. Maybe also burn them down. Beau Hill. The man, the myth, the moose. If the 80s had a sonic foot powder, it would be Beau Hill. The dude produced Rat, Warrant, now Winger, which is like summoning a demon that only speaks in power ballads and crotch sweat. You want layers? He gave you layers, all right, each one drenched in Astroglide, ego, and the tears of failed drummers. You want glossy production so smooth it sounds like it was dipped in baby oil straight from Diddy's Love Dungeon? He got you covered. Every album he touched came out sounding like it was trying to seduce your older sister's Camaro for a piece of that sweet, sweet tailpipe. Because of that, Winger's debut didn't just sound good. It sounded like it had a credit score. Too clean, too shiny. Like somebody whipped it out and power washed a Bon Jovi record and stuffed it with guitar solos. And here's where it gets weird. Some critics, ones with names and jobs, started claiming Winger was more musically serious than the rest of the Sunset Strip. They said that Winger flirted with progressive rock because they opened one song with a string section. That's it. That's the evidence. The dudes had a cellist for 14 seconds and suddenly they're King Crimson? No, that's not progressive. That's what happens when you wander into a Juilliard recital looking for the bathroom. It wasn't prog. It was porn with a violin intro. But fine, let's pretend Hungry was Winger's attempt to write a symphony. It's still a song where Kip Winger screeches like he just stubbed his toe on a sex doll. You can't polish a turd, but you can apparently add strings and call it art. Then they got the opening slot for the Scorpions, which is perfect, because the Scorpions were already the soundtrack to confused strip clubs and Cold War karaoke. Winger opening for them was like a fart warming up the room before a belch. And America bought it, just totally ate it up. The eyeliner, tight pants, poodle hair, none of it felt weird in '89, because everything was already broken. And then the American Music Awards came knocking. Best New Heavy Metal Band. You ever hear something so wrong it makes your gums itch? That's this nomination. It's like giving the Nobel Peace Prize to a guy who sells bootleg fireworks behind a Chili's. The only thing heavy about Winger was their use of conditioner. If Winger was metal, then so is a can of Diet Sprite. The nomination was basically the industry's way of saying, hey, we're all coked out of our minds and forget what guitars are supposed to sound like, so here's a trophy for having cheekbones and not setting yourself on fire during a rehearsal. And yet, Winger still thought that they were serious musicians, with their ballet training, their string intros, their seventh chords. Meanwhile, Kip is out there dry humping the air on stage like he owes him child support. You can't claim prog rock credibility when your biggest hit is basically a Tinder profile set to music. So yeah, Winger hit it big, but it was all held together with Hairspray, Delusion, and a prayer to the god of shoulder pads. Beau Hill polished it, MTV sold it, and America, for one terrifying moment, believed it. But don't worry. This was the late 80s, and Karma was just warming up backstage. 1990, the final sweaty gasp before the 80s officially died in a dumpster behind a burned-down roller rink. And what does Winger do? They double down with In the Heart of the Young, which sounds less like an album and more like something you'd get arrested for whispering at a playground. This was their second album, and somehow it sold more than the first. 1.5 times platinum. Which proves one thing, America will buy anything if you slap enough spandex on it and scream about vague feelings. Japan went gold again, probably assuming the whole thing was an elaborate performance art piece. Canada, well, they were still drunk, so nothing changed there. And the singles? Can't get enough. ENUFF, a spelling crime so aggressive it should have been tried in The Hague. It's the sonic equivalent of chugging Mountain Dew while punching your own reflection. Easy Come, Easy Go, a song that sounds like it was written during a pot-induced haze staring contest with a lava lamp. Then there's Miles Away, the power ballad to end all power ballads. Soft, weepy, it somehow became the most requested song during Operation Desert Storm. Let's stop there. Imagine you're in a foxhole, mortars going off everywhere, sand in every orifice, and the only thing keeping you sane? Kip Winger whisper sobbing about long-distance relationships into your soul. That's less comfort and more psychological warfare. It's musical shell shock. If the enemy had just played this song over loudspeakers, the whole war would have ended in a tearful group hug and a truckload of therapy. But the real kicker here, the album blew up while hair metal was already decomposing. Nirvana was lurking. Soundgarden was just getting tuned up. Meanwhile, Winger's over here triple layering their vocal harmonies and crying in lace gloves. They weren't fighting the tide. They were doing backstrokes in denial. It's like they saw the iceberg and just yelled, "Quick, add another power ballad." And people say they connected with a large audience. Yeah, that's because their audiences still had perms and unresolved daddy issues. The Heart of the Young was just the sound of the 80s collapsing in slow motion. The final desperate mating call before the plaid-shirted meteor hit. They had it all. Melodic hooks, technical chops, glistening pecs, and still decided, hey, let's write music that sounds like a tampon commercial with a guitar solo. And Beau Hill was still back there in that producer's chair, dousing everything in reverb and armpit glitter, yelling more drama, while the rest of the world was starting to cry blood and growl about heroin. So, the album sold like gangbusters. It was a glittering turd with a golden ribbon. And then, right after that, we've got the tour that broke Winger. From 1990 to 1992, Winger embarked on a 13-month, 230-date world tour, which is exactly how long it takes to disintegrate your sanity, one hotel mini fridge at a time. It's less of a tour, more of a spiritual collapse on a schedule. They played with Kiss, the band that invented face paint, fire, and pretending to still be dangerous after age 40. And then, of course, you got the Scorpions, still screaming about wind and change while chain smoking through leather vests. And let's not forget ZZ Top, the dudes who look like two garden gnomes who found a blues record and a pile of meth. And Extreme? Yeah, they shredded Winger into stage confetti. Kip and the boys were out there doing hair flips and ballet stretches while Nuno Betancourt came out finger tapping, speed picking, legatoing like he was exercising demons through the fretboard. The only problem was, even Paul Taylor had to admit that he literally watched Extreme and Cinderella, David Lee Roth, and realized mid-show that the venue was emptier than Kip Winger's Grammy shelf. That's how fast the scene was dying. One moment you're screaming easy come, easy go in front of thousands. Next minute you're in Cincinnati watching your future circle to drain. But back to that godless tour. It wasn't just long. It was medically irresponsible. And it broke them. Specifically, it broke Paul Taylor, who did the only logical thing. He left the band before his soul permanently fused to Yamaha synth. Exhaustion was the word used, which is code for I'm tired of pretending this is still cool while Nirvana's outside smashing the windows in. He saw the writing on the wall, or maybe just his own reflection just said, nope, I'm out. But what did Winger do? They soldiered on, like a horse with a broken leg saying, nah man, I got this. They brought in John Roth, a man whose name sounds like a tax consultant, but now had to play rhythm guitar on the Pole Tour, because that's where this thing was going, downward and sadder, like watching a peacock molt in real time. It was less of a tour and more of a death march in eyeliner. 13 months of singing songs that already felt like punchlines to a joke the world was about to stop laughing at. And you know what really killed hair metal? It wasn't grunge. It was this damn tour. This never-ending nightmare. By the time they hit show 230, Winger wasn't a band anymore. But here's the real punchline. They actually thought they were still rising. But here it is, the fall of Winger. And it's not just a fall. It's a yard sale free fall off a cliff into a septic tank. If the 80s were the prom night, the early 90s were the brutal hangover where everybody woke up asking what the hell country they're in. Grunge hit. It didn't just shift the scene, it literally napalmed it. And suddenly Kip Winger's whole aesthetic, shirtless ballet instructor wailing about teenage lust, was about as welcome as a fart in a funeral. Even America's sweetheart Bon Jovi couldn't sell tickets the way he used to. That's how you know things were serious. When Bon Jovi struggles, the Four Horsemen are not far behind. And Kip, well, he actually had the self-awareness to admit it, saying grunge totally wiped everything out. But the thing is, it didn't help that your genre was oversaturated to the point of full-blown musical diabetes by that time. So you got 92, Paul Taylor is out. That leaves Kip, Reb Beach, and Rod Morgenstein, the last three survivors of this glittery apocalypse. They crawl into a studio and make Pull, which sounds like either a serious album or an off-brand deodorant. And credit goes where credit's due. Pull actually had grit, more serious tone, grown-up lyrics, less bubblegum, more gravel, and of course no one gave a shit. Because no one was buying records from these guys who used to hump fog machines for fun. You can't go serious after you've done a full decade of pelvic thrusts and keytar solos. It's not reinvention, it's identity theft. And then, the final bullet, Beavis and Butthead. Viewers out there, if you're under 30, let me explain. This cartoon single-handedly assassinated Winger's career by putting their name on the chest of a cartoon nerd named Stuart, who probably smelled like milk and lived with his parents. Every episode, there he was, Stuart in his tragic little Winger shirt, getting tied to trees, stuffed in lockers, publicly emasculated. His dog wore a Winger shirt. His mom wore a Winger shirt. His entire existence was a punchline, and the worst part, it worked. Reb Beach said it tanked their tour. People were literally too embarrassed to be seen in the vicinity of a Winger show. Like it was a leper colony with guitar solos. They had to cancel dates. Reb Beach had to sell his guitars and house. It's not just a fall from grace. That's grace stomping on your face in the dirt with Doc Martens while quoting Nirvana lyrics. But then, of course, Metallica had to get their hand in on peeing on the corpse as well. In the Nothing Else Matters video, Lars Ulrich throws darts at a poster of Kip Winger. And just to twist the knife, they projected that clip at their live shows. Thousands of fans laughing, cheering. All while Kip Winger's poster gets turned into a dartboard by the world's most smug Danish drummer. And really it was those two things. Grunge, nuked them. Beavis and Butthead salted the earth. Oh, third thing, Metallica built an amphitheater on their grave and threw parties on it. As fast as they went up, the downfall wasn't gradual. Winger became a meme before memes existed. And no amount of string sections or ballet poses could save them from the hell that is being uncool in America. They tried to mature, they tried to grow, but when the world sees you as Stewart's favorite band, you do not get a redemption arc. And by the end of it, Kip Winger was like, man, we got the shit kicked out of us. They were so close to actually headlining arenas. They could practically taste the pyrotechnics. Reb Beach, in a final twist of cosmic cruelty, said that if they had come out just a little earlier, he would have been rich. And he's right. If Winger hit in 84 instead of 88, they'd have been headlining Monsters of Rock instead of scraping by on county fair nostalgia. But nevertheless, they actually came back, because that's the thing about Winger. You can humiliate them, mock them, wedge them, meme them, pelt their lead singer's face with darts in front of 20,000 screaming fans, but they'll still crawl back on that stage, probably wearing the same pants. They're not merely legends, they're survivors of a cultural extinction event. They toured the world, crashed into irrelevance, got immortalized as a cartoon punchline, still came back in the 2000s with new music and live shows. Basically, it's a band that refuses to stay buried. Say what you want about Winger, they got hit by the full wrath of the 90s and lived to tell the dumb, beautiful, eyeliner-drenched tale. Thanks to my subscribers, you rock. If you haven't subscribed, light up a friggin' lighter, aim it at the subscribe button, torch it with a can of hairspray, move it a little to the right and do the same damn thing to the like button, join the family, and I want to thank you so much for watching.